webinar so far in a series of 3, really exploring the importance and the why of this particular purpose. Next slide, Pragati. GPW and the Pistoia Alliance are working together to do this particular webinar series. It's set to explore the cutting-edge frameworks revolutionizing pharmaceutical regulatory data exchange around the identification of medicinal products and the global substance registration system. What to expect in this series. Today, it's about the EU SRS through the guest speakers that we have today, the European ISO IDMP compliant and future ready pharmaceutical substance database, and the formation of the consortium. Next slide, please. What was covered in the first webinar? In the first webinar, we spoke about the IDMP and the GSRS as ISO-based frameworks driving global regulatory alignment and digital transformation. We had the pleasure of having Christian Hay introducing us about the IDMP and the ISO perspective, which was very insightful, and we see that a little bit further coming down the road, the wedding cake of IDMP. We also learned through support from the FDA how the GSRS ensures consistent substance identification through collaboration amongst regulators, improve data quality, patient safety, efficiency, and enable data reuse across the product lifecycle. Furthermore, interoperability supports seamless data exchange across systems, regions, and stakeholders. The ISO standard adoption promotes international regulatory convergence, enabling faster market access and enhanced pharmacovigilance. IDMP implementation is phased, starting with foundational data and progressing the full data integration. We will make sure that the links to those particular first webinar is also available, and the second one along with the third one. Whoever can go back to the original presentations and get the full mindset about what was presented in the earlier sessions. Next slide, please. The second webinar, that was all about pragmatic insights, I would say. Olaf from the Uppsala Monitoring Center gave us an insights in the drug monitoring program that the Uppsala Center executes for the WHO and how important this is in global drug safety. It has discussed the challenges in handling pharmacovigilance terms and the role of the drug global in addressing these issues, and the role that the drug substance database plays within that as such. It covered the relevance of the standards along with these tools. Then we had a very pragmatic case study presented by Ian Mayer from GSK. That was very good insights how leading life science companies are creating a vision, a strategy, and implementation of these standards and making it work for contributing to safety for the patients, if you will. Next slide, please. This particular slide actually shows the wedding cake. So I cannot move the cursor, but if you look to the right, then you see the layers of the ISO health informatics standard with all the ISO standards in there, the product, the substance, and the details behind that. Absolutely worthwhile to see the perspective from the Uppsala Monitoring Center there, as presented by Olaf. And next slide, please. And we had Ian, Master Data Management at GSK, bringing forward their program. Highly recommended to revisit that webinar, as we can do. Next slide, please. And today we have two speakers really talking again about the why, if you will, of the drug substance database. We have the pleasure of listening today to Marcel Hoefnagel, Senior Assessor Biopharmaceuticals within the Netherlands, the CBG. Marcel is also Chair for Quality Innovation Group at the EMA level and Chair of the Substance Validation Group. As well, we have today Birte Nielsen, who we could closely work with in the Pistoria Alliance to create the awareness around the GSRS consortium in this industry. This webinar series is intended to be shared widely and create that further awareness to find support for the open source, as you say, open science, open data, open source environment in which the GSRS platform could flourish. So next slide, that is again for Marcel. Senior Assessor of Biopharmaceuticals since 2002, specializing in vaccines, allergens, biosimilars, and immunogenicity, and cell and gene therapies. As chair of the Quality Innovation Group at the EMA and HMA Substance Validation Group, leading the initiatives on innovative manufacturing approaches and substance registration, both via the IU SRS as well as the GSRS. Marcel has contributed to ISO standards for biopharmaceuticals and global GSRS harmonization. He has an academic background in biology, a PhD in plant biochemistry from Leiden, and with prior postdoctoral roles in plant biochemistry and biotechnology. Engaged in research projects supporting biopharmaceutical assessment and regulatory science. Marcel, the floor is yours to make people aware about the importance of the drug substance database and how you see this as value to the community. Next slide, please. Marcel.
Thank you, Louis. Thanks for having me here. So I tried to give you a bit of insight in the way data are handled within substance data are handled within Europe. And I wish to thank all the people that helped me in this project, EU SRS, as in the substance validation group, and this team is, let's say, the managing group of the substance validation group. So I've titled this ISO IDMP compliant and future ready pharmaceutical substance database, because I really think this makes us future ready, and we all need to be future ready if we wish to capture all the benefits that let's say digitization can bring to us and AI can bring to us as well. So I think we can really be future ready, and it's available to us, all of us, and we need to use that. So if we go to the next slide, in this presentation, can I have the next slide? Yes, thanks. So sorry, go back. So yes, thanks. So the EMA landscape, if you look at the substances, we've got SPOR and we have got SMS and EU SRS, and I'll go into the details of that. I'll give you a bit of details of what we like to see in the database of EU SRS, why we wouldn't be using a naming-based database alone, and what the use cases would be for this database, and that we are currently already using it for, and what kind of future developments we see. If we go to the next slide. So substances in the EU, if you provide data, they will be loaded into SMS. So that's the substance management system. And these data are fed into PMS, so the product management system. And related is the OMS, so there's organizations, and mainly we look at GMP approved manufacturing sites who typically go into organizations, and also the different marketing authorization holders would be in the organizations. And then we've got referentials, which generally are the pharmacopoeia data that go in there. So if we look at the substance landscape in Europe, so we've got SMS, but we also got EU SRS, and EU SRS is ISO IDMP compliant. So apart from the codes and the names, because in SMS you only find the names, aliases, and the ID of a substance, but in EU SRS you also find the chemical structure, the hierarchy of the substances, how they are related to other substances. You will find the scientific references for those substances, and you can also do a structure search in the EU SRS, just as you find, as we've seen for GSRS presented to us by Marlene Kim in the first seminar. If you go to the next slide. If you do a change request, so you submit your substance data either for scientific advice, for an orphan designation, for your marketing authorization application, your change request will go to SMS, but will also be shared with the substance validation group, with EU SRS, and there the substance validation group makes sure that your data will become ISO IDMP compliant. And this feeds into the PMS system. So SMS is the identifier that connects the substance data with all the different databases in the EU, so the electronic product information, the European shortages monitoring platform, this is still foreseen, the antimicrobial sales and use platform, and all the other elements mentioned here. If we go to the next slide. There we see the difference between EU SRS and SMS. So the SMS is connecting all the regulatory processes and systems, and in EU SRS, which is the EU is the open source solution, the GSRS software, which implements ISO IDMP standards, and that gives good quality substance data, and that also gives, let's say, scientific identification and characterization of the substances, whereas SMS is the central source of substance data between the regulatory processes. In the future, we see an integration of SMS and EU SRS, and that's also as expressed by EMA, that this is the future. The substance validation group has got national substance experts, so these are substance experts from the network, and in EMA, the data stewards that only deal with the substances with their names and connected to the appropriate organizations and products. Currently, SMS public data is accessible via an SMS user interface in Iris and substance exports in the SPOR portal. EU SRS is currently only accessible for the national competent authority users, but we hope in the future to also have a public version of EU SRS. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is the wedding cake again. I think it's important to understand where we are in this wedding cake. So we've got medicinal product information. Then in that we find pharmaceutical product information, including the dose forms, the unit of presentation, the route of administration and packaging, as well as the exchange of the units of measurements. But of course, the basis for all this are the substances. Whatever you get, it's the substance that is important that you get. Of course, how much you get of it is important, the units of measurement. But firstly, you have the foundation, and that's the substances. And these are the substances that are captured in EU SRS, just as they are captured in GSRS. And this substance information should obey the ISO IDMP standard. If you go to the next slide. If you now look in M4Q, so that's actually what you have to submit if you apply for marketing authorization, then in section 3.2, you are expected to give general information about your substance. And that would be typical substance information you would find in EU SRS. and partly in SMS. So that would be your recommended international non-proprietary name, INN, the compendial name if it's there, the chemical name, the company or laboratory code if you're still in process of clinical trials or are asking for orphan designation, or any other non-proprietary name that we could find in the system, such as the Japanese accepted name, the UNI, the British approved name, things like that. But apart from that, in 3.2.S.1.2, we find the chemical structure, or for pharmaceutical products, we like to see the amino acid sequence, glycosylation sites, post-translational modification. So that also should be provided. And also this general information will be captured in the EU SRS. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is what it looks like. So it's a structured substance database. This is searchable. We can enter new substances in there. It's, as said, ISO IDMP compliant. All the active ingredients, excipients in European medicinal products should end up in the EU SRS. That's the case currently for all chemicals. And we are filling the rest of the medicinal products in there. The data I will show later, the numbers where we are. We harmonize with our FDA colleagues, taking into account European legislation. So if you click once more, I think we also see the GSRS. So we try to align these substances in these two databases to make sure that everything is aligned. So it's that also basically you would only have to submit your data once, and that would be, to my idea, the future. And that also all international bodies are looking at the same data for the same substances if they are in the same product. So if you go to the next slide. So what kind of information would you find for the different substance type? If you look at the chemical, we would like to see the chemical structure added. So we will add that for these substances in the database. That's what we are currently doing for all the legacy data. For polymers, we introduced the structural repeat units, and how many there are of these repeat units. For mixtures, we indicate which components are there in what ratio. For proteins, we will have the amino acid sequence. We've got the glycosylation in there, and for all the proteins, we will also put the actual ratios of all the glyco groups that are present on the glycosylation sites in there. That this will be confidential information. We'll keep it confidential, but for us as regulated, it's important to have this data to also be able to compare them. If you look at nucleic acids, we want to have the nucleobase sequence, also all the modifications, the 5 accent cap, for instance, on an mRNA used for vaccination, and all this kind of data that are entered into this database. And then we've got the so-called structurally diverse. This can be vaccines, where you have to think of virus particles that are used for vaccination, inactivated bacteria that are used, but also herbal products in which, let's say, the extraction solvent is very important. This data will be introduced, as well as for herbals, the taxonomic information is very important to identify indeed that we are dealing with the correct plants. And then we've got the so-called specified substance group 1, in which we put constituents and ratios, but also if proteins form a virus-like particles, that would typically go into the specified substance group 1. If we go to the next slide. So if you would like to use a database with names only, and if you click once. No, once more. Sorry. Oh, Oh no, please go back. Oh, I hoped I had a different slide. Okay, I have to. No, sorry. No. I have sent an updated version, but don't worry. Just leave it like this. This is okay. So if we look at the different SMS IDs, they are actually using different names and for the same thing. So a BCG bacteria is essentially the same as Bacillus calmette-quercetin vaccine, but they've been given a different SMS ID, but it is the same substance. And also BCG for immunotherapy is again the same because they are all the same substance, and but they still get different SMS IDs. This is typically the problem when you are dealing with name databases. And also if you go to the lower two lines, then you can see meningococcal group A oligosaccharide conjugated to CRM197 has a different SMS ID as the one below, which is basically the same because it's again meningococcal group A oligosaccharides conjugated to Corynebacterium diphtheria C7M9, but is again the CRUM109 and 197 protein. So it's the same substance, but they've been given a different SMS ID. And this is typically why a names database is prone to error. Whereas we are going to add the structure to the substances, just as our FDA colleagues have done. And that makes clear that if you now would look for, if you would introduce a new substance with the same structure, the system will alert you that you're adding basically the same substance. So that's one of the advantages of using a structured database. If we go to the next slide. Not for all the substances there are appropriate names. For a lot of vaccine antigens do not have an INN, specifically the legacy data. So if you now see on the left-hand side anthrax vaccine adsorbed, we are working on a naming strategy where we really breaking it down in the elements. So in this case, it's the species, but Bacillus anthracis, we indicate which strain it is, what protein is used, and that is inactivated. And actually, that's the information that anthrax vaccine adsorbed on the left-hand side should explain, and that's why we're working now with international teams to get a better naming system for this kind of antigens. If you look at mRNA COVID vaccines, they do have an INN, so that's a clear identifier we can use. And also many protein do have an INN, and in the future also currently most of the cell and gene therapy products do have an INN, and also in the future they will get. So the substance validation group is working on naming rules for vaccine antigens, but also for the herbals we're working on names. So if you submit a substance to the EMA, the proposed name is expected to be in line with the naming rules, and which we also indicate which elements need to be kept in the name. And we will ourselves evaluate the legacy names, and the naming rules we try to harmonize them internationally, and we have put out guides, and these guides I will indicate later. If you go further, please. Another issue is that there might be differences between the EU and the US in naming, and because the USP pharmacopoeia have got different names for the same substances sometimes, like dexamphetamine sulfate is the European pharmacopoeia name, whereas dextroamphetamine sulfate is the USP name. So these two coexist, having aliases in both jurisdictions, so in GSRS and EUSRS. And this way we can deal with it, but we still got the structure, and in that way it works. If we go to the next slide, please. We also can sometimes have a mismatch between the European pharmacopoeia title and the pharmacopoeia definition. For instance, we've got sulfacetamide sodium, and that's the title. But actually, if we look at the structure correctly, we also see there's a monohydrate there. So we now introduce also the monohydrate as an alias. And if the pharmacopoeia title is updated, we can also update the name of this substance appropriately in this EU SRS. If we go to the next slide, we got the next example. I skipped that one. Sorry. So where are we with the substance validation group? We've got 18,320 validated records that cover about 80% of the products that are on the market. Most of the data that we've got in there are the chemicals, partly structurally diverse, mainly vaccine antigens, both human and veterinary vaccines. We've entered 91 proteins and 37 polymers. It's the substance validation group that reviews the substance data. These come from 10 NCAs, and we work on adding records and improving the data quality. If we look at the new substances, that's about 200 each month in SMS. The triggers here for are the CTS, or the Clinical Trials Information System, UPD, Union Product Database, that for the veterinary products. SMS provides the data. The data come from the investigational medicinal product dossiers and also from SMPCs. Currently, we've got 10 substance guides, and these also contain the naming and registration rules according to European legislation. That's, for instance, for chemicals, for proteins, for nucleotides, for vaccine antigens, for herbals, etc. We've got these guides out there. And a link will become available, and that might be my updated presentation that I hope will be uploaded after this presentation. If you go to the next slide. So if you look at the substance validation group, we've been divided in 3 groups. A group dealing with the chemicals, the polymers, the mixtures, and the specified substance group 1. We've got a group dealing with the biologicals, so that's the proteins, vaccines, IDMPs, the nucleic acids, the allergens, and the blood products. And then we've got a third group working with the herbals and the homeopathics. And I should also mention that I'm very grateful to have a mentor in the Norwegian agency. They do a great job supporting the substance validation group. And then we've got an HMA secretary that helps a lot with our work. So if I go to the next slide. Again, this is the data that you are supposed to submit for a marketing authorization application. This is the same slide you've seen before, but I like to go to the next slide. Then you can see how it looks in the database. So if we now would have a rituximab, that's a monoclonal antibody, that's a protein, that's an IgG1 monoclonal antibody. This is all general information you're supposed to produce. And it's a chimeric mouse monoclonal antibody. If you click once, you can now see that we enter the subunits that this monoclonal antibody consists of, as well as the amino acid sequence of the monoclonal antibody. If you click once more, you can now see that also the glycosylation sites are indicated, and also the disulfide bonds are indicated. What you don't see in here, but will be present, is all the glycosylation glyco groups in the percentages that are present at these 2 glycosylation sites. If we go to the next slide, we get a chemical. So this chemical consists of 2 chemical moieties, and these all the details of these moieties are present in the database. If you click once more, I think that's it. So yes, oh yes. So again, this is the kind of general information that you have to put in 3.2 in the dossier. So you could as well just supply it in this way as a JSON file. Then everyone would be happy if we would have this as structured data. If you go to the next slide, please. So if we go to the substance model in the ISO standard, and we've got substance information, but of that substance information, we sometimes need additional information, as I gave the example. If you've got a protein and this protein forms virus-like particles, then this additional structural information will end up in specified substance group 1. So if you click once, that works. Yes. So in the substance, you will find the nomenclature and the structure, and in specified substance group 1, you will find additional structure information. If you click once more, then there are three other groups. So it's specified substance group 2. That is currently in EU SRS not yet available, but the software already gives this possibility. This will contain manufacturing information. So what is the manufacturing and high-level manufacturing information? And there's specified substance group 2. That's pharmacopoeia information. So what is the monograph that the substance has to obey to? And in specified substance group 4, detailed manufacturing information can be captured, and I think currently the standard is being worked on, and the specified substance group is further expanded, and I think that will also allow you as manufacturers to capture your data in there. But that is for us currently only future development. If you go to the next slide, please. So what would EU SRS be useful for, specifically for national competent authorities and as EMA regulators? National competent authorities have to inform their national systems like healthcare professionals, hospitals, pharmacists. They need information, but also scientific societies within the national agency have to supply them with substance information. So EU SRS can actually provide all the relevant information immediately, also the scientifically important information, and also make sure that the correct substances are identified. It will help with e-prescription. It will also be important for pharmacovigilance, and I'll go into a bit more detail later. In case of shortages, it's good if we know what kind of substances or similar substances are on the market. And in the future, if we get structured data, then also structured substance data will be important and will also allow us to compare substances during review. If we now can search for similar substances, then we can compare, and we can also make sure that we apply the same acceptance criteria for the same substances. If we go to the next slide. So if we look at our role as national broker on substance information, we can provide scientifically sound data to the clients of the substance information, like the healthcare providers. We can provide this high quality substance product information on our national competent authority websites. We can make sure that the preferred term is in accordance with the European legislation. We can exchange the data of EU SRF with the national system, like immediately load it into it, and we can map to the national records easier. If we go to the next slide. So if you look at pharmacovigilance, for instance, we make sure that we use a single and unique substance identifier for pharmacovigilance purposes. We can also link to all the other classification systems. We can now have all the adverse events for a specific substance, also from clinical trials, not only globally, not only Europe-wide, but also globally multinational, because GSRS and EUSRS are having the same substances, so we can link to each other, and also UMC will have the same SRS system, so that will allow a better pharmacovig data. We can make sure that it are the same substances as the other jurisdictions are using. We can also do a structure search, so we can look if we can find adverse events from similar substances, so based on molecular structure. And we can also have a substance hierarchy, so we can connect a parent substance to a metabolite, to a salt, etc. If you click once more. You can also identify manufacturing issues earlier. So if you've got a starting material supplier that's got issues, and we know that the starting materials going into the specific substances in specified substance group 4, then we would be much quicker to find if there's an issue with one of those starting materials. Similarly, for impurities that would occur. The nitrosamine issue that has costed a lot of money to identify. If you've now got high-level production information in SSG2, we would have been in a situation to much quicker identify the products that use this manufacturing process, and would have been quicker to have all the appropriate warnings for the specific products. Similarly, if we've got a GMP problem with one manufacturer, if that would show up manufacturing different products, we would identify this quicker. So in that sense, EUSRS and the whole GSRS system is going to help us a lot in pharmacovigilance. If you click once more. So we can also use it if we look at safety or efficacy profiles to compare biosimilars, for instance, because we know now the glycosylation patterns as regulators. So if we could see differences in safety or efficacy, maybe you can relate it back to the glycosylation patterns. Or maybe if we look at the safety of vaccines, we've got much more data on the structures of the different vaccine antigens. If we go to the next slide. What's the future we foresee is that, let's say, if you provide your substance data to SMS, that it would be automatically loaded to EUSRS, where the substance validation group checks the substance data, and that this would be automatically loaded into the National Competent Authority databases. That would give you the national translation, and SMS would be using the check data into the systems below, like UPD and PMS. If we go to the next slide, please. We see a lot of software upgrades coming, having all the specific specified substance groups in there. We see that data exchange using FHIR is coming our way. We are working on that to enhance the connectivity. We hope to have all the substance groups in EUSRS by the end of the year. So also the ATMPs, the nucleotides, the herbals, and all the vaccine antigens. We are looking forward to a situation where all the data will be submitted as structured data, not as PDFs. This is a development that's already ongoing in the review of ICH M4Q. And hopefully you might actually be in a situation that you could provide us with a file format like JSON. Maybe several manufacturers will also start using GSRS. It will allow us to have a more efficient and risk-based consistent assessment. And the drawing on the right-hand side is where in maybe the future, there could be a public space in which the marketing authorizations provide their substance data that is reviewed in there and will feed into EU SRS and FDA, or maybe you submit to FDA and to EU in parallel, and we connect with each other. This is the future we have to think about. And I hope we will shortly see SSG2 and SSG4 in our substance model. And I think with that, I can hand you over to finally Beate, because I think a collaboration to further develop GSRS would be benefit us all. And I have to thank all the people involved in developing and supporting us. With that, I'd like to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Yeah, so that is me. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Pistoia Alliance effort in creating and with all our stakeholders, of course, creating this GSRS consortium, and a little bit about the whys that we have been hearing about in the past webinars as well. And I do have a slide on a little bit about the what and the how as well. Just very briefly, who is the Pistoia Alliance? I know I covered some of this in our first webinar, but I thought it would be useful just to mention again that the Pistoia Alliance, that we are a global not-for-profit organization, going back to 2007, or incorporated 2008 here by 4 different pharma companies, with the mission to really lower barriers to innovation in life science. And, you know, working under the Pistoia Alliance, very unique framework that we have for pre-competitive collaborations. We run lots of different projects, develop solutions for really common problems across the pharma ecosystems. Next slide, please. And here you just see some of the members. We have more than 200 members across the entire pharma ecosystem, whether that's from the supply or demand side. Next slide, please. So we operate under different strategic priorities, and they all really boil down to data, and data, you know, really being the foundation for AI and for digital strategies. But a lot of this is also focused around, you know, the how-to. How do you manage? How do you maintain? How do you consume data? The how-to for data management, the how-to for data governance. That's really that is not competitive, right? So that is a very good area for a lot of targeted and perfect use cases for pre-competitive collaborations, which is really what the Pistoia Alliance do. And GSRS fits in well here. If you want to have harmonized substance data, you obviously cannot do it alone, right? So it fits squarely in here, perfect for what we do. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the idea about the consortium, like all the Pistoia Alliance suggestions, ideas, was brought to us by members from NCATS, US Pharmacopoeia, the GSK, FDA, and and was brought to us partly because we have projects where we are already developing, for example, our IDMP ontology project, where we are developing to align with an ISO standard on substance-related data. And we also have saw that on a previous slide, our in vitro pharmacology project, where we are developing standards and tools for in vitro bioassays and how do you structure that. And we have a public-private relationship with the FDA where we work on that. So the consortium would really help define how, you know, we could address industry needs and how we together or collaboratively could shape this unified vision for GSRS, having or paving the way, as it says here, for a globally harmonized regulatory system. As of now, really, there are no widely available commercial systems that comprehensively will capture all of IDMP substance data. So that really makes GSRS quite unique and one of the few solutions out there to ensure compliance. And as Marcel mentioned, right, you know, about being a future ready, as the regulators, they begin to adopt IDMP, GSRS, you know, would offer this structured, document-free way of sharing your substance data, and obviously supporting collaboration, supporting data reuse. So yeah, and as we have heard in the previous webinars, it is an open source code, right? So it is possible to share innovation, to share new functionalities, which can easily be incorporated and used by all. Next slide, please. So here you see some photos from a workshop that the Pasteur Alliance hosted in March on really the value to industry of an open source GSRS system. And we had a good attendance. It was attended by the regulators, by industry, technology providers. And this is sort of like the idea of the consortium, right? You know, you want to foster these communities through workshops like this, so that you can address both the industry but also regulatory needs, ultimately accelerating adoption of GSRS across the entire sector. So some of the things and the whys that I have on the next slide is things that came up on this during this workshop here. And so I know it's a little bit wordy slide. So these are sort of the whys, and really I think we talked about is, you know, a challenge has been, you know, the practical adoption of GSRS. So for pharmaceutical companies really to embrace GSRS, they would have to prepare the data so it can be imported into to their local version of GSRS. And GSRS, there is a lot of flexibility in how you implement the system, and trying to understand all the components is indeed a bit of a learning curve. So it would take a little bit of time to transition into GSRS. So if you have the consortium, organizations really could benefit from each other's learning on how do you navigate and prepare your organization for this journey. How do you really operationalize things, and that would reduce your trial and error, speed up the adoption as well. And this, of course, can be supported in many ways. You can create, and this is one of the things we talked about, the consortium could help create a sort of a help desk to have documentation, tutorials. We could showcase practical business use cases, really to encourage more of a buy-in from senior stakeholders. And we saw this at the workshop with GSK sharing their story. And that really takes us to the next point, and so sort of having a common approach and common tools, right? So in this day and age, industry, I think, has seen the benefits of working together towards common tools and standards, whether it's manufacturing or logistics or other sectors. There are immense advantages in moving towards standardized approaches. The world is also more and more interdependent, right? So if you have one common tool, you are much more able to easily navigate different regulatory environments, right? Ensuring that your data is captured in a very consistent format. Which of course is important when you want to do your reporting, your analysis, and for the regulators for their decision making, right? So there are a lot of benefits, but it also reduces your likelihood for errors, miscommunication, especially when you are transferring between different organizations. So we of course have to ensure that things can work together, and working with different vendors, organizations, and expanding to new partners, new regions, right? So that's why common standard systems that talk to each other is very valuable. So that is the idea, is that this consortium can set this roadmap for the capabilities and that should really be developed collectively, right? And going to the funding and support, sharing really the cost and the risk of doing so. We also touched upon the fact that GSRS was developed more than a decade ago by and so in order to sort of fulfill the vision of harmonizing substance data, broad range of expertise is really needed, whether it's pharmacology, data scientists, the regulatory field. And as Marcel said, you have to start readjusting, realigning the platform to ensure that you meet the needs, not just from the regulators, but also from the pharma company side, before ISO standards and these things becomes mandatory, right? So it's much easier now for the industry to shape the future more proactively than sort of adapt to a deadline. And yes, there are some improvement that needs to be undertaken, and we discussed that during this workshop. Is that incremental approaches? Is that a comprehensive rebuild? And so this is what the consortium will help do. Ensuring that it fits business purposes. I don't think, I need to go through all the bottom ones here, because I think we've heard it very well, especially Ian, what he shared in his webinar. But, it is a freely available, open source, customizable, standard ISO compliant tool, right? So it is a really good way of mastering for your master data management, interfacing with regulatory submissions, right? Having a single source of truth, as Ian called it in his webinar. I think there is a lot of long-term benefits for industry and regulators to have substance data with, as Marcel also showed, full scientific supporting information, as well as having a tool to master your substance data. So and sort of moving towards this product model approach, right? Having substance data that can link across the entire system, right? Different departments, manufacturing, maintenance, that's having one source of truth that provides you with that centralized view of what you're dealing with, and And I could see Marcel had on his slide, substances are basic for medicine. So high quality substance, they say, is crucial. So just iterating that. Next slide, please. So collaboration between industry, the regulators, technology providers is really key in moving this single source of truth and this idea about the consortium forward, to have these communities that could serve like as a central hub or a central platform to share these lessons learned when it comes to the journey on how do you prepare your organization to operationalize, finding support for these developments, maintenance, and then really create sort of like an inclusive environment where all these participants would have sort of an equal voice in contributing towards the common goal. Having a governance body that have actionable have an actionable agenda to reach this vision here. So really, yeah, just driving the shift towards global substance management with a more consistent and a more unified approach, and of course coordinating amongst all the stakeholders, health authorities, manufacturers. Yeah. Next slide, please. So here a little bit on the what. So these are just example activities on what the government, the consortium could do. So really, having a governing body that would focus on maintenance, development, and this shared direction for GSRS, creating a roadmap with actionable steps. I'm not going to go through all of these, as these are just example activities. And on the next slide, you can see some of the hows and the importance of jointly developing the strong governance framework, having a sustainable business and financial model, defining the roadmap, short-term, long-term goals, and how define the process for open source release management and everything. So these are some of the next steps and the hows that we need to now develop together in the consortium. Next step, please. So the members, as I said, from industry, from the regulators side, from the technology providers, helping, with financial support for the next phase of the project. But we also need subject matter expertise, in-kind contribution, and of course a commitment to collaborate. So actively really seeking this at the moment to sort of drive this forward. If you want to know a little bit more, go to the next slide, please. There are lots of material online. You can see the video that we have from the workshop that I mentioned. It's a 1.5 hour roundtable discussion around some of the whys and the hows. So that's a very good video. We have it on the Pasteur Alliance website, and you can access it there. We also have this opinion piece that came out in the American Pharmaceutical Review that is quite good. This is sort of a magazine or an issue that reaches more than 400,000 senior executive in the pharmaceutical ecosystem. So that's some good reading there. And then my email, if you want to get in touch, we would love to hear from you. I'm not sure I have all the slides, but yeah. So really just to emphasize, that as a GSRS, the advantage of having a freely available open source, customizable, ISO compliant tool to master data management, or a data management platform that can be storing substance data with all the scientific supporting information, and the sort of the long-term benefits that would have for both the industry and the regulators. So that is all from me. Over to you, Louis.
Yeah. Now, thank you for laying the case out again in this webinar. As such, I think following up on Marcel's presentation, which lays out quite a few use cases to address. So maybe I would like to ask the panel members to come online. Given that we are now in the third webinar, can I ask Christian, Marleen, Olaf might be traveling, Ian, if you're there, and Joe and Shrindi as initiators, if you also come online. Thank you, thank you. Do we have Kim still?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi, Kim.
Hello. So you started with the question, but I couldn't tell if you
I thought I have everybody come, and then we can start the discussion. So please feel free, Marleen, to respond.
Okay. Bertha, thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful. I agree with you that we, since many of us are using GSRS, it'd be great if the global community in health informatics is also uses GSRS, because it's part of the ISO standard. The tool is open source, and also internally GSRS team helps assist the reviewers. We build tools for them, such as a manufacturing form. We show them how to use chem informatics tools. And with that, it would also be great if industry also used the same ones our reviewers are using. And then that would make it easier or make the review process more efficient, because then we are seeing the same data that comes in. Whereas a long time ago, well, actually not that long, we got chemical structures in the form of pictures and PDFs. So even though we see the same thing, they had to redraw it, which was not good. And even in GSRS, we had to redraw the structures, which could introduce mistakes. But now we get structured data files. So we are seeing the same thing. And if there's a mistake, we can easily communicate with the sponsors quickly. And GSRS and the reviewers, we see the same thing, and it has helped tremendously.
Yeah, which also corresponds, I think, what you addressed, Marcel. The gaps between EU and the US SRS as such. Are those really out of sync, or are they 100% aligned, and are they working from the same open source today? Would be one question that comes to my mind.
Well, we are using the same software. Our US colleagues have gone, I think, more novel, a newer version of GSRS, but maybe Igor can say more about that. But basically, we are aligned, and we are slightly further updating the data on the biological medicinal product and substances. and adding more detail to that. And that will also be shared with our FDA colleagues in agreement with the marketing authorization holders for the legacy products. And the idea is that we basically would in the end have the same data set on the substances. And in that sense, then we are fully aligned. But and currently we know about each other's substance data, so in that sense we are aligned. But there are some details specifically on the biologicals where more details need to be added, and we are in collaboration with our FDA colleagues working on how we would update these.
So from that perspective, on the one hand, there's the open source, on the other hand is the data as such, and you're slowly working together to what is almost the same data set. That would still be a journey for quite a few years, Marcel.
Well, yes, to be fully aligned will be a journey of several years. But we also have confidential data that will remain confidential because that's regulators only information. And of course, so we would like to have a public version of EU SRS, and that, let's say, should be fully aligned with the public version of GSRS in the end. And the confidential data will remain only for the regulators.
Yes. That brings to another question, but there's one question that is in the Q&A, and I think it's the right one for you. How is the EU SRS integrated with the other EMA platforms such as XEV and PD?
Yes, well, they are connected. The XEMVPD refers, let's say, to SMS, and then via SMS it gets into EU SRS. So, and that's where the SMS IDs still need to be, let's say, cleansed, because I've shown you some examples of where you've got, let's say, the same substance with different SMS IDs, and these we are cleaning up for all the biologicals. And that is still ongoing, and that will then also be translated back to the EMVD database.
Thank you. I think one more link is requested there. How is it integrated with PMS?
So again, the connection is via SMS. So we load the SMS ID in our EU SRS database, and SMS ID is used to connect all the systems. But Igor is probably the one who knows more about this than I do, and I see his hand raised.
Yeah, hi Igor. You want to contribute to what Marcel was saying there? Oh, you were there and now you're lost.
You're
Igor,
muted, Igor, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. First, Marcel is absolutely correct. We are on PMS and XVMPD connected to EUSRS indirectly over SMS. Yeah, SMS is a central point of interconnection for data for EMA internal systems. Yeah, and what we are doing, we are have synchronization process or half automatic synchronization process between EUSRS and SMS. So, and if you like to more detailed information, it's something like we are able to generate a report. I create a script which used the API from EUSRS and SMS, and this report generates information of changes in both systems, and we can see what changes need to be done in SMS, and then it can be sent to SMS administrator to implement these changes or like change request. And other part is this changes which need to be implemented in EUSRS, and for that is another script created, which takes as a source information from this report and implements all necessary changes in EUSRS. It's a Python script, used API. This is a we are using benefits from open source system with open API and can manipulate or change data directly in the system with external scripts and tools what we can develop.
So Igor, what you're now referring to, is that available like in an open source setting, or is that proprietary to the EMA?
It's very EMA specific, but these scripts are based on another framework what I'm creating for migration process. And this is a Python framework which I can make publicly available. And I have another sort of tools which can be published. Yeah.
Thank you for that. But what I do for a moment, I put up the one slide, Birte, from you, that what are the next steps as such, and maybe we can discuss about that together as such to really get the GSRS consortium going, right? I see governance framework, strategy and roadmap, financial part, and the technical and operational management. We are talking here about partly open source and open data. Do we need to highlight, Birte, maybe more the aspects of what would open source really entail, and what would open data really entail? As to what Marcel is also saying, there's open data, there's closed data. You have any thoughts on that, Birte, to address that in maybe in the technical and operational management, or maybe as a principle of working together?
Yeah, that is, you know, that's a good question. I think I'm going to hand over to Ian because
I think
it's not my data, pharma data. So yeah.
I think it's not so much open data, but open similar processes. So we're all running the same process in how we manage our data and how we can share the data so that we can get the data in a format that is easily shareable with the regulators. There may be slight variations be how EMA want to receive it as opposed to how FDA want to receive it. But as long as we have the standard process for how we share that, how we store the data, understand the business rules behind that, that's where I see the consortium can help, coming together in shared ways of how we store and use that data, share that data between folks. Not so much the specific confidential data, but how we begin to build that processes up so that we can share the data in a facile manner.
Standardize on the information exchange.
Exactly. You know, and understand the processes involved, what are the business rules we need to follow that may slightly vary between regulator and our own internal business rules.
Ian, since you're working from the industry perspective and GSK, in this part, you're probably very much exposed to the GSRS from a US perspective and the EU GSRS from European perspective. How do you look at from a global perspective? What are regulatory authorities elsewhere in the world doing, and would they potentially benefit from that if they would adopt some?
I think so. You know, one of the things I got from the last seminar was Olaf's presentation about how we can share data globally, how we can identify the same substances for global use. EMA will have their own identifiers, SMS IDs, FDA will have their Unicode, but we really need a global identifier that we can all share that data with. Understanding how people can then use that data, review that data in different systems to come to the alignment. Marcel already mentioned they'll hold, the EU SRS will hold an EU preferred term, but they'll also have as a synonym the FDA preferred term. And I'm sure Marlene will say the same. FDA will hold a preferred term, but they'll also hold synonyms for other regulators' preferred terms. So that will give us an ability to share the same substances, which is key. The substance structure is key. And I like the way Marcel put it. You know, the substances are key to the products, and we've got to be able to share the same substance data.
Well, since you bring up the topic of global identifiers as such, maybe Christian, do you mind if I tap you on your shoulder from a ISO and perspective, health informatics, as we have so many identifier discussions on that level? Christian, where do you see that, where we are and where are we going from a global identifiers?
Yeah, you know, the topic of the identifier is something very well known in the sense that everybody thinks if I manage the identifier for something, I am the master of it. And that's the reason why we have such a fragmentation in identifications. Say on a regulatory point of view, a couple of competent authorities in Europe have their own identifier for substances, for instance. The EMA had also its one as well, and so forth. I think the breakthrough with IDMP is that we are fostering a convergence to, at the end of the day, a single identifier. Well, that will take some time. I think if we can reduce the diversity by already aggregating, say, around EMA, to have one European identifier. We have already one US identifier, but US is half a continent and a single country at the end of the day. It's not a miracle. But if we can, you know, have less diversity in the identifiers, I think the whole community will benefit of it. My vision, the one of IDMP, is that at the end of the day, regardless if local organizations have their own identifiers, but they all recognize, all converge or point to one single identifier actually maintained by UMC, Uppsala Monitoring Center, and that will facilitate the transactions, they change the evaluations and pharmacovigilance, etc. That's the goal at the end of the day, and that's the purpose of IDMP actually. But IDMP is not against local or regional identifications, but it fosters one single one.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that, Christian?
Yeah.
I think that's perfectly. I think it's totally correct, but it's the ability to align those identifiers to the same common structure. Marcelo mentioned in his talk about different names having being the same structure, but identified by different IDs. And I think that's what we need to do, be able to align those different IDs to one common structure.
You're perfectly right, Jan. I was a little bit short in my statements. The assumption is, of course, that we have the same objects identified or described and the same identifier. So the common identification or the common structure of the identification is a major step, of course. And the common identifier is just a bonus on it. But the facilitation of the exchanges after. But indeed, IDMP sees a really, well, when I speak to non-specialists, I say the same structure of computerization of data around medicinal products, which includes the substances, for instance. Does it help?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Christian. Well, one of the topics that on what is next is governance overall, and the ISO is more a standardization body supported by all the standardization bodies of many countries. The Pistoia Alliance is an industry standardization body. What entities should play a role in the governance framework to make this work for the GSRS? Maybe Birte, is this something that has been pondered between Pistoia and the ISO on potential collaboration, or what would be a good governance that protects the interest of industry versus the interest of the patients, for example?
Yeah, I think it's important that we have both the industry and the regulators. I think perhaps in the past, GSRS has been seen like a tool made by regulators for the regulators. I think we need to sort of shift that a little bit. So we have both industry and regulators working together to develop, as a balanced approach on the long-term needs, right? To deliver value to all the stakeholders.
Right.
So that's
Yeah, especially all the stakeholders. Then, if you say industry and we say regulators, regulators probably should operate in the interest of patients as such. Here I'm more as an observer looking into the situation. Where learning about the substances, and Marcel had an interesting slide where there was a number, I think I noted it down, 18,320 validated substance records in the EU SRS. Basically, most of them chemical based, 91 proteins and this many others as such. I think we live in a world where we see also other substances surface as such. So there's a whole area of substances that has not yet been covered.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, please, Marcel.
We are in the process of adding all these biological ones in the future, but we struck onto this problem of the naming of these antigens specifically, and we really want to, so the records are ready and we can enter them, and also we could enter them with their SMS IDs, but we want the naming of these antigens and biologicals first fully sorted out before we enter them. Otherwise, we come back with names and review, and we didn't want to do that. So in itself, the records are ready to be loaded up there. Just to add.
Well, thank you, Marcel. And I have to make a note here. So we have reached the time. So I really want to thank you all for collaborating and contributing on this third series. And when the discussion starts, more interesting questions come to the table. So if we take a few more times, I would like to see Marcel on this additional substances, maybe traditional medicine substances that come into play. I saw the name of Somya there. Somya, are you there? Still in the session? Somya, if you can elaborate on what we have been doing on substances for traditional medicines, and maybe relay that back to Marcel.
Yes, Louis. Hi, all. Good evening from here, India. So, with respect to medicinal herb substances, we are here at GBW collecting data that would add value to the herb and eventually build something that is standardized. When we say herb, there are a lot of data associated with a herb with respect to different stages, such as raw herb, process steps, and processed herb. So the depth of the data and the standards associated with it, the standard terminologies, the values, everything differs. And it has its own value in the industry and the regulation. So here we do a standardized approach in capturing all this data. We're building something that would add a value to this hub in the global space, especially in the regulatory. Yeah.
So just letting you know, Marcel, that the work is going on more substances. It's just scratching the surfaces today. But in such an open source network, this type of data could be analyzed better and faster, and could potentially mean quite I say it as it's quite growth of substances available for research and for medicinal products in the future. Would you be interested in explore that further in the future as a topic?
Yes, please. Yes, please share.
We will follow up afterwards
Okay. Yes, thanks.
on that. Again, thank you all for participating. Also towards the audience, this was the first of 3 planned webinars that will be available via YouTube and direct channels, etc. We are looking at some events, webinars in the fall. Webinars that could address again the perspective from some of the other regulators such as Norway or Switzerland, but also technical solutions that have been brought into place, whether it's open source or scripting, Igor, like what you are referring to in your experiences as such, or more on the data side and substance side. But the big intent is really, can we get the consortium started together with the Pistoria Alliance and create this community that truly drives this open source, open data, or open science, if you will, whilst of course respecting the confidentiality part, whether it's on the data substance part. So again, from my end, I want to thank you all for your participation, and I wish you a very good afternoon, a good day, or good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.